If you follow me on Twitter or if you listen to me on this show, you know one of my favorite publications is The Federalist. They have some of the best writers, the best stories out there, and I'm thrilled to welcome Sean Davis. Thank you for being with us, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
So, Sean, I want to ask you, you wrote a lot today in your tweets, and you've written about it in the past, that you're very disappointed in the GOP establishment, but you also think that now the blame game is going to begin. Can you explain to people why you feel the GOP, and I think you put it like this, they never fail to fail?
I mean, it's hard to be pithier than that. They do never fail to fail. They had a pretty easy layup for these elections in Georgia. They needed to come back from the November election and make clear that they weren't going to stand for voter fraud, that they were actually going to do what they could to clean up elections. And they needed to come out and do at least something to try and make whole the millions or tens of millions of people whose livelihoods, whose jobs were destroyed by these horrifically misguided government coronavirus lockdowns. And what Republicans did instead was they responded to all of the fraud issues and the integrity concerns following the election by mocking or belittling those of us who were really, really worried about the safety of our elections, and then by refusing to cut $2,000 checks to people whose incomes were destroyed by government lockdowns. What they did instead on that is they had no problem overriding Trump's veto on a defense bill so that they could authorize billions and hundreds of billions of more dollars in their forever war in Afghanistan, but an extra $1,400 for people whose jobs and businesses and livelihoods and incomes were destroyed. That was just too much. And so what you had was this perfect storm in Georgia where they didn't do anything to fix the obvious election fraud issues. They didn't give swing voters a reason to stick with Republicans, and then they just belittled their own voters. It's no surprise they lost. And instead of taking responsibility, the GOP establishment will do what it always does, which is blame everyone but themselves.
Right. And I liked your tweet. You said a lot of very rightfully angry conservatives will say the GOP deserves this. And I'm part of that group. A part of me that isn't listening to my brain all the time says, well, good. I'm glad you guys finally, got what was coming to you and lost. But then you say, but the problem is that the moronic architects of these failures won't pay the price for the incompetence and corruption. As always, we will pay the price for their failures. But my question to you is, Sean, do you see this at all as a wake-up call to the GOP? Like, do you think that maybe in the future they'll start running people who could actually win and who are true Republicans?
I hope so. And actually, with Trump out of office, I think he's going to have a lot less pressure to go and endorse a lot of these squishes, these rhinos, which he's done in the past. I mean, he got conned by the establishment in a number of races. I think the worst example, or I guess the best example from my point, it was when he got involved in Alabama and endorsed the corrupt former Alabama AG Luther Strange, who had no chance of winning. And then that led to Roy Moore getting the nomination and then eventually a Democrat taking that seat. And I think with kind of Trump on his own and no longer moored to the establishment or having them whisper in his ear, I think he is going to absolutely go to town on a lot of these turncoat fake Republicans who have spent years doing nothing but attack him. People like Adam Kinzinger in Illinois, people like Mitt Romney, honestly, people like Liz Cheney, who's now in Republican leadership in the House, who have done nothing but dog him and go after him rather than supporting the agenda that the people who voted for him wanted. So I think there are absolutely opportunities for changes within the party that will be for the better in the long run. But I'm really, really concerned about the damage that's going to be done to the country in the interim. I mean, Mitch McConnell's going to be fine. He's rich. He's got lots of money and lots of power, even if he's in the minority. But those of us, who work real jobs and are paycheck to paycheck, we're going to be hit with higher taxes. We're the ones hit with school closures. We're going to be the ones having to deal with gun confiscation. And there are real world harms that are going to happen to American people who didn't do anything wrong. And I just hope people who believe that Republicans got what they deserved, and I'm very sympathetic to that, think about all the damage that's going to be done to the country while we try and recover from their failures.
Yes, no, and I agree with you there. And I also want to jump back to a point you just made, because I've been feeling like this for a while, which is I was disappointed when Trump didn't win. But then I started thinking, we shouldn't underestimate the power of this guy when he's kind of unshackled and he's sitting in the peanut gallery and he's able to kind of just, toss out whatever he wants and see how it sticks. It's kind of, it will be interesting to see what he can do when he's no longer the president.
Right, and I think a lot of establishment Republicans are comforting themselves today with things that might not be true by saying, oh, well, Trump's not going to be president anymore. He's going to fade away and we won't have to worry about him anymore. One, I don't think that's true. I don't think Trump's going anywhere. I think he is going to get revenge on the people he believes spent 4 years trying to take him down. But even more importantly, the party today is not what it was in 2004 when a bunch of these people kind of rose to power. This is not the party that believes in forever wars in Afghanistan, in Iraq. This is not a party that is all gung-ho for free trade and open borders like they thought it was in 2004. This is a populist party that wants to put American interests first, whether it's economic, dealing with a runaway rogue China, or whether it's foreign policy. And you can keep Trump in the picture, or you can take him out of the picture. But the party is long-term altered for the better, in my view, in ways that the GOP establishment is going to have to come to grips with.
Sean, I want to really quickly ask you here about the story that broke yesterday from the Washington Post, the correction heard not around the world. You were very fired up about this. Can you explain to people what they got wrong, which I'm sure was a huge accident? They wrote a key detail involving a story with Jacob Blake incorrectly, and you were calling them out on it as well as a bunch of other journalists.
Right. So the Washington Post is garbage. We'll start with that as the foundation of this story here. It'll be our through line here. And what they did yesterday was when the police officers who shot Jacob Blake, a man in Wisconsin who was wanted on felony assault charges, had assaulted police, was armed with a knife, had refused arrest, had been tased multiple times, who was trying to flee the scene of a crime with children. Police felt their lives and other lives were in danger, and so they had to use deadly force against him. And that caused all kinds of riots in Wisconsin and whatnot, with the media cheerleading for them. And yesterday, we learned that prosecutors there declined to bring charges against police officers there because they did nothing wrong. But in comes the Washington Post trying to fan the flames of racial resentment and trying to gin up riots, claiming that Blake was unarmed. Number one. Number two, they claimed he had been shot 7 times in the back. False. He even admitted to cops he was holding a knife and had changed hands with the knife several times. He wasn't shot 7 times, and he wasn't shot in the back. But other than that, the Washington Post nailed it.
And don't you love they make these corrections and they say, whenever we make a mistake, we try to correct it right away. So how many mistakes do you start to make before people start to realize, they all seem to be in one direction and, they all fit your narrative?
Well, yeah, this is the same publication that lied about Flynn's phone calls back in 2016 and 2017. They lied about the Russian collusion hoax. It's the same paper that started the entire Kavanaugh hoax to keep him off the court. They were part of the Covington Catholic hoax.
I totally agree. Sean Davis, I'm gonna have to cut this a little bit short. We are gonna take Trump in a little bit, but I so appreciate you joining us. I hope you come back on again. Sean Davis writes for the Federalist. You can find him on Twitter at Sean M. DAV. He's my favorite tweeter, maybe of all time, and that's high praise because I've been on Twitter for quite some time now. Thank you, Sean Davis. When we get back, guys, we'll take some of the Trump rally. I'm Grace. This is the Grace Curley Show.